A new CNN analysis has found a stark split in where federal agents are arresting immigrants in red and blue states. Data from Immigration and Customs Enforcement shows that while more immigrants are being arrested in states that voted for President Trump, 59% of those arrests took place in prisons and jails. By contrast, in Democratic-leaning states, 70% of ICE arrests happen in the community. That means that agents are showing up with their faces covered, picking up immigrants from work sites, streets, and mass roundups. All that has sparked protest. Trump officials say that the differing tactics are simply a downstream effect of sanctuary city policies in many Democratic-controlled states, which can limit prisons and jails from cooperating with ICE. Local officials often can't hold migrants in custody based on ICE orders alone, so many times they're released before immigration officials can arrest them. Let's discuss this and more with Chad Wolf. He's a former acting Homeland Security Secretary under President Trump. Chad, thank you so much for being with us. I wanted to ask you about one aspect of this analysis of ICE data. In some states, like Massachusetts, 78% of those arrested in community raids had no criminal record. So I wonder how sweeping up these non-criminals makes communities safer.
Well, look, I think the Trump administration's been very clear from the start, which is they're going to continue to prioritize but they're not going to exempt anyone else from immigration law, right? We saw that during 4 years of the Biden administration where they said, we're not going to deport, we're not going to arrest and therefore deport certain classes of illegal aliens here in the United States. And unfortunately, what that does is it just encourages more and more of those types of individuals to come to the country knowing that they'll never be deported. So the Trump administration says, look, everyone's on the table, but we're going to continue to prioritize certain, or I should say, criminal illegal aliens. And of course, certain communities have more of that than others. So it's hard to compare and contrast certain states to other states or certain cities to other cities.
Understood. If this is about deterrence, as you alluded to, and you're detaining students and folks that don't have priors that are here in the United States, just living the American dream and working and may have overstayed a visa, which is a civil offense, not a criminal one, then what exactly are you deterring? Because those folks aren't a public safety threat, right?
Well, I think what you're deterring here is the fact that individuals knowingly break U.S. law, knowingly stay in the United States when they have no legal right to be here. I think that's the type of behavior that you want to deter. You want folks to come into, not only to have folks come into the United States illegally, but to stay here legally. So if your visa does expire, you have an obligation as that visa holder to leave the country or to get it renewed, obviously in the appropriate time frame. So there's a whole number of ways in which, just because you don't perhaps commit an additional crime, there are other ways that you're here in the United States illegally. And I think what the Trump administration is saying is that regardless that you are here without a legal right to be in the United States, and so you are removable. And we are not going to say that some people, broke the law more than others, and so therefore they have to, they're going to be removed, and only them. They're saying, look, everyone's removable. Prioritize, they have a limited amount of resources. They've gotten some in the reconciliation bill, but they have to prioritize that, and I think that's what you see them doing today.
Just to be clear for our viewers, immigration violations are civil offenses, not criminal ones. I do want to ask you about something that President Trump said on CNBC today. Let's go ahead and play that clip.
These people, you can't replace them very easily. People that live in the inner city are not doing that work. They're just not doing that work. And they've tried, we've tried, everybody tried. They don't do it. These people do it naturally. I said, what happens if they get it to a farmer? What happens if they get a bad back? He said, they don't get a bad back, sir, because if they get a bad back, they die.
I wonder what you make of that remark, whether you think immigrants come by hard labor naturally.
Well, I don't know the context of that remark or what the president, you showed me a clip of that. I will say that I think that we continue to be a country of immigrants, and I think President Trump has said that. Make sure that as folks do come here, that they come legally. And the big concern I think that the Trump administration has, and we certainly did during the first administration, are those individuals that come here legally, that want to stay in the United States illegally. That's the concern that we have, because as folks come in and you can't vet them, you don't know who they are. That's the main problem. It's a national security issue just as much as any other type of issue. And I think that's over the last 6 months or 7 months, I should say now, that's the issue that the Trump administration is trying to be dealing with. And then the last point I would make is you can't forget about the 4 years of the Biden administration where you had millions, over 10 million individuals come into the country. A big subset of those individuals have stayed here in the United States, and we don't know who they are. And I think they're trying to deal with that issue as well.
I do want to give you the context of what the president was talking about there. He was asked about previous remarks that he's made regarding American farmers and their reliance on undocumented labor. In other words, people that are here in the United States who don't have papers, who are doing hard labor. The president says that they come by it naturally, that they can't replace them. He's saying that they're doing jobs that Americans won't do. So if the president says that we need them, our food supply depends on them, why are they then being targeted and not given a pathway to obtain citizenship?
Well, I would disagree with you. I don't know that they're being targeted. These groups, like any
ICE
other
is
groups
raiding
that are here
farms.
illegally,
Are they not?
ICE has been given a mandate by the United States Congress to remove individuals that don't have a legal right to be here in the United States. It's their job. Now, if Congress doesn't want them to do that, they should change the law and have them only focus on a subset of individuals that are here, perhaps only criminals. That's not their job right now. Their job is to remove individuals, all individuals that don't have a legal right to be here. Now, look, I've heard the president talk about the ag industry and farm workers and the need for that, and he's talked about perhaps doing something in that vein. I don't have any information on that, so I'll wait, like you will, to see what comes of that. But I think it's important to know that, again, ICE is doing its job, which is to say they are removing individuals that don't have a legal right to be here. They're focusing on criminals, but they're not excluding any group of individuals.
ICE does decide ultimately who they're going to target. So I go back to the broader question of, if you're seeing that a lot of these folks are non-criminals, they are students, the kinds of workers that the president says the country needs, who come about hard labor naturally, in his words, then why go after these folks and why round them up when there are folks out there who have committed crimes and who likely would be, their removal likely would make the community safer? Why go after just a blanket population of folks when you don't actually know if they've done something wrong?
Again, I feel like I've answered this 3 times. Again, the Trump administration is actually targeting both groups that you described there, both the ones that are criminal illegal aliens and those that perhaps have not committed a crime but still reside here in the United States illegally.
Why go after both?
I think anytime that you exclude a population, such as you indicated, students that may have overstayed a visa or any other groups of individuals, what you have seen over in history is that more and more of these individuals will come to the United States, will overstay their visa because they know that there is no repercussion. They know that the federal government is not going to do anything about it. And so you will see visa overstay rates shoot through the roof because there is no enforcement mechanism here. So the Trump administration has said, we saw that during 4 years of Biden. We didn't like it. We didn't like the border crisis that it caused. And so we are actually going to do our job. We're going to remove individuals. We're going to focus on the criminal illegal aliens, but we're not going to exclude any population set from the law.
I guess the issue is that those folks that you just described as not being criminals, in the sense that they don't commit violent offenses and their essential violation is not having a piece of paper, they wind up in facilities alongside criminals detained for an undetermined amount of time, and they face serious repercussions with their lives for not having a piece of paper or overstaying a visa. Nevertheless, Chad Wolf, we appreciate the time. Thanks for joining us.
Well, okay, thank you.
Thanks so much for being with us, Chad. We'll be right back.